Also, my aiming sleeve came in, which I tried it with the glass mouse pad as well, and it felt nice. Definitely takes some getting used to. Wait, I'm just realizing I could use this for Osu. Chat, does anyone use a aim sleeve when they play? Oh, it looks weird on camera. It's like my arm isn't there. It's like my arm got chopped off. Oh, Zudi uses one? Well, okay. All right. I feel like Zudi needs one for obvious reasons. That shit is massive. Her tablet is massive. I got this for a glass mousepad that I ordered recently because Optimum Tech has literally drained my bank account. So I'm trying this compression arm sleeve out to see if it makes any meaningful difference. I do sweat when I play this game, and it does get sticky to my tablet, but I've always viewed that actually as like a good thing. I feel like I actually play better sometimes when my hand gets sweaty, because then it sticks to my tablet more and won't slide or some shit. This one will make it more uniform and may occasionally make it slide, but if it's a consistent slide, then and I can actually get used to it, then maybe I can actually use it to like use more of my wrist on my tablet when I play the game. Who knows? Who knows? Okay, I'm actually going to go straight into the benchmark map from yesterday. Burn this right. All right, here we go. Whoa. Okay. Already off the bat, this compression sleeve is forcing me to change the way that I spin. The way that I normally spin is that I push my wrist into the tablet. My wrist, the friction of my skin on the tablet is an anchor, and I use that to spin. But now if I do that, my cursor, like...
What's good at boy?
It's different. Okay, this is wild. My wrist is definitely moving a lot. This compression sleeve completely changes the way that I aim. And I'm not sure if I like it. Okay. This is actually insane. It's like opening my mind. I can actually understand why people use full area now. Because using this compression sleeve actually makes me feel like I've unlocked another dimension of my aim. It feels... How do I say this? It's like adding another joint into the system, if that makes any sense. So, like, imagine... I'm going to bust out paint.net. So, this is the best way that I can describe it. Imagine your arm... Or imagine your aim hand as different joints, okay? So you have your body, okay? You have your body, you have your shoulder, you have your arm, you have your wrist, you have your palm, and then each finger, all right? This looks extremely exaggerated, all right? And this is a top-down point of view. So imagine this is the person, their feet are like down here, and like da. Wait, this is the elbow. This is the shoulder. Yes, shoulder. Wait, shoulder, arm, elbow, forearm, wrist. Yes, this makes sense. Okay. Imagine this is you. So you're like, imagine these are your like your fucking glasses. All right. The monitor is like right here, and blah blah blah. Whatever. All right. You're facing this monitor. All right. So here's the thing. When I typically play Osu, I only use my wrist and my hand and my fingers. When I rotate it back and forth like this is how I do a horizontal movement in Osu. It's because I am basically rotating my wrist left and right, and that's like, yes, to the left, clockwise and counterclockwise, and that's how I achieve a left to right movement within Osu. However, that relies on my wrist being planted and anchored in this spot. By using a compression sleeve, it makes it almost... well, this is the intended effect. It lifts your wrist so it's no longer anchorable. This is now a joint that can be moved. So instead of just achieving a left-right movement by rotating my wrist, I can achieve a left-right movement by rotating my arm. Basically, I can move my arm to basically move everything, dude. Like, I can keep my hand completely still, but I can move my arm to achieve a left-right movement, which allows me more joints to then aim other objects more finely. Does that make any sense? It's so... Let me dumb it all down. Let me dumb it down a lot. Imagine you're trying to reach something and you have a stick, okay? If you are anchored right here and you cannot move this, the only way that you can achieve this is by adding a joint, which is like right here, which will allow you to then bend. So by adding a joint, you give yourself a range of motion, all right? Before you could only hit an object here. By adding a joint here, you are now able to hit any object within this this area. Shit. This area is now accessible because you added one joint, right? However, by adding another joint like here, you can now access this area of movement. But that combined with these two joints allow you to access all of this in between. So like basically all of this you can aim by adding another joint. It basically makes it more able to move your hand in a way to go to a position, if that makes any sense. So the more joints you can use, the better, because it allows you to aim more places, right? However, if a joint is preoccupied, then it is difficult for you to then subsequently aim for another object. So say you're trying to aim for, let's see. Maybe I should get my iPad. I have a whiteboard! Check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out. Chat, I swear, dude. This might actually make me switch to SFA. I just don't know if I should do it during this challenge. Oh, f me. Boom! Whiteboard. Okay, so here's the deal, here's the deal, here's the deal. All right, so this is the epiphany I just had. Let's actually use a real life example, which is my arm, okay? When I sit, my body is right here, okay? Imagine if I was only on a diet of McDonald's. My belly is here, my shoulder is like here, my arm rests on the table around here. So this is my arm, okay? Chonky arm, okay? This is how I rest, all right? So normally when I play the game, I make a left to right movement around this pivot, okay? But it relies on me keeping this part of my wrist anchored onto this surface right here. This does not ever move. If this moves, my aim becomes shit, which is why I move my tablet around so often. I have to keep my wrist anchored right here because that allows me to then subsequently make a left to right movement on my tablet area, if that makes sense, right? However, if I were to start allowing this anchor to then move where it's no longer an anchor, it allows me to then introduce an entirely new range of movement by then making the pivot down here. So here, imagine if I pivoted here instead of here. I can now access this range of movement. My wrist isn't moving at all. I'm now aiming with my shoulder. That's crazy. And what that allows me to do is that we're running with the assumption that my fingers are not working. I can now move my shoulder and my wrist to hyperextend and reach new areas that would have been less comfortable before. So it requires more work, but it allows you to reach areas that would have been less comfortable to do if I were to only use my wrist to move from left to right to like reach areas. Does that make any sense? So by using or by introducing this arm sleeve into the equation, it will allow me to use parts of my body that otherwise I wouldn't be able to use consistently, thus allowing me, which it will be more difficult to control since it's another what's it called, variable added in my aiming equation. But by having an extra variable, there's more levers that I can pull to aim any specific object in an area. Yes! It's like having more controls. It's like adding a button onto a controller. It's like giving yourself a third arm. I don't know. All right, anyways. That was my discovery. I will take another look into SFA probably later. Maybe today. I'm not sure, dude. It depends on whether or not I actually want to use this arm sleeve like long term. I'm still like coping with the idea of like, is it even worth using an arm sleeve? Because like I'm experimenting. I will be experimenting with like using a glass mouse pad soon. And like that will basically require me to use an arm sleeve. But if I do end up switching and I'm going to be using an arm sleeve when I'm on my desk anyway, wouldn't it make more sense for me to just like use it for my tablet as well? To just like double up and have it be like a permanent accessory that I start using? Who knows? Full area on a medium-sized tablet or just equivalent to a small tablet full area? Could be either, to be honest. Like what matters is that like I've introduced a new dimension to my aim where shoulder aim is now usable. And the idea of using my shoulder to aim is fascinating. Because that means if my wrist and my fingers are already preoccupied aiming a specific pattern, I can still move my aim. I can still move my cursor while aiming towards a different object. I can aim for two different objects at the same time, basically. Because... how this gets into like note lock in... I need to find a better way to explain this, dude. I think this idea is just so fascinating. Yes, you are literally aiming for two different objects at the same time. Because if you think about it, like, there are two movements when you aim for an object, right? There are two movements every time you aim for an object. Say there's a circle here and a circle here, right? If your starting position is right here and you're going there, you're not just making one movement. You're making technically two. A vertical movement and a horizontal movement, right? So... in this case, it's probably going to be something like this. Like if this was like force, in terms of force, it's something like this to push your pen in this direction. However, as you move towards it, you need a opposite movement in this direction a lot to stop, but you need more movement in this direction in order to aim for this object, right? So as you're approaching this, you're now decreasing your up movement and making it more of a down movement. And you are also accelerating your right hand movement so that you're queuing up to aim for this object. So that's why your cursor slows down, hits this, and then that movement downwards, because you queued this up, allows you to instantly snap back down and go in that direction. This queuing up motion is what I'm talking about. By having additional joints, you can queue up movements to make this comfortable. If you didn't have additional joints, you would have to go here, stop to 0 movement, and then basically go from 0 movement to here instead of maintaining this leftwards movement, if that makes any sense. I wish I could better articulate the epiphany that I just had, dude. It'll be better if you could explain it in 10 minutes or less. It'll be better if I could explain it in like a sentence. That's it. Hold on a sec. Okay, class. I'm here to present my thesis. Oh my god, I feel like I've used more brain cells today than I have during my entire career being full-time as a content creator. I've never used so many brain cells. It's actually insane. But I am now ready to present my thesis. Okay, guys. This is my multi-joint thesis. It runs on these 3 assumptions, okay? A joint can only make one movement at a time. If you're moving your wrist up and down, you can only make one of these. You can't do multiple up downs at the same time, all right? One movement is a starting and stopping action. Okay? So in order to do a movement, you must start and stop. Otherwise, it doesn't count. Number 3, a joint cannot start a new movement until it has completed its current movement or its stop, right? What this means is that I cannot do 2 movements like 1, 2. It has to be 1, 2, all right? Very simple. This shouldn't be the issue, but it gets a little complicated when we introduce multiple joints because keeping track of them is difficult. So let's assume this example, all right, where we have J as your joint, S as your starting position, A as the first position of interest, and then B is the second position of interest, which is at a later frame. So let's take a look at the one joint example. This is, for instance, if you were only using your wrist, okay? Your wrist would be down here, and the objective is to move to point A and then point B, all right? With my fingers being the end point, all right? So starting A, B. What does that actually look like? Well, we start from our normal position, which is like this, all right? With our first frame, we'll be enacting a movement upwards and to the left, all right? So that allows us to move here, all right, on frame 2. However, because we started the movement, we now need to stop that movement. So in order to stop it, there's an equal and opposite force placed to then allow you to stop, all right? So then, now that you're in a stopped position, you can now make a new movement. This is all one movement, all right? You're in a resting position, so then you start your new movement, which is here on frame 4. So, with this new movement, you are now reaching your final destination at frame 5, but you need to stop yourself. And so that's what the opposite movement is, or the opposite force to stop yourself from moving, and then that's where you achieve your resting position. Okay? In total, this takes 6 frames, all right? An arbitrary time measurement. All of this is to illustrate this idea that if you have a joint, you must make one movement at a time, and you must start and stop it, okay? There's a starting action and a stopping action. When you start an action, you cannot stop that action, or you cannot start a new action unless you stop your first action. That's why you can't just go from here to here without this opposite force being here, or from here to here without this opposite force being here. Very important, okay? So let's take a look at the 2 joint example, all right? Where instead you have 2 areas where you can pivot. This is running the example that you're not only having this movement, but you can also have this movement, all right? Now, in reality, there's a lot more joints. There's wrist, there's this joint, this joint, this joint, etc., right? There's all sorts of different joints that you have in your hand, which is great, right? But let's just think about 2 of them and what that means, what that allows you to do, okay? Same thing. You start at frame 0 with this starting position, okay? On the first frame, you enact your first movement using your wrist joint, okay? With your wrist joint, you're moving it up and to the left, right? In this direction. However, while your first joint is in the middle of a movement, you can actually stop the movement by using your second joint, which is your fingers, by making yourself stop midway to this position A, okay? So while your first movement is allowing you to travel from your starting position to point A, your second joint is doing the opposite movement so that you can stop 1 frame earlier. So you're now at a stopped position on frame 3 instead of frame 2 because your second joint canceled the movement of your first joint. So, same thing applies here. We now take the new starting position, and again with joint 1, we start a movement towards the next position, point B. And so, while you're traveling, your second joint can now place a opposite movement to cancel it out, allowing you to stop one more frame earlier. The difference between these two positions is that this introducing a second joint allows you to do two things at the same time. A starting and stopping position at the same time, allowing you to save a frame for each movement. Now, a frame is arbitrary in this context, obviously. I don't have exact like values of time of how long it takes for you to make this arbitrary movement. But the idea is that by introducing a new joint, it gives you additional controls that you can do in combination with your other joints to allow yourself to have much more control over the position of your cursor. And that is my epiphany. What do you guys think? What was the point of this? I just thought it was cool, so I wanted to share it. So you can aim with your shoulders and wrists simultaneously? Exactly! Exactly! Yes! So that's what I mean by aiming for two objects at the same time. You're not actually aiming two objects at the same time, but you are basically allowing yourself to start and stop a movement, allowing you to then recover faster to then begin aiming for a new object. Beautiful. That is my thesis. Now, there is a downside though. Having multiple joints is very difficult to control. There's a reason why people like using smaller areas. Why do people use smaller areas? Because it requires less joints to move across, right? When you have less joints to use, you have to use a smaller area, but that means there are less joints you have to keep track of, right? But what does that mean? That means you can only do one movement at a time, or you can do less movements than you could do at a time. So that makes it really difficult to do technical, let's say like aim control type stuff that requires you to have multiple start and stops, and start and stop movements that require a lot of control. It's easier to do one big movement than it is to do multiple smaller movements at the same time. But by having multiple joints, it gives you more control. That is my thesis. Would be cool if you would film all of this, but proper filming in mic plus script, and then you share the true form of it and allow us to keep on improving things. Eventually. I think it's still somewhat... I think the example would be a lot more simpler if I didn't use 2 dimensions. I'll have to use like a robot or some shit. Oh! Fuck me, dude. I can't find it. I had a tablet that had a pen that was operated by 2 joints. It had 2 joints that you could pivot around. One that was anchored and one that was not anchored. That was like 5 years ago or some shit. It was a wired tablet. The tabletless tablet. Yes! Yes! Does anyone have a clip of that? The tabletless tablet. Someone here has to have information about the tabletless tablet. No way. Oh, today we're going to be checking out something called the... Okay, this was not 5 years ago. That was in Timmy's room. It's like a year ago. What the HiQ tablet, aka the tab. I need to bring back my Zoom cam, dude. That shit was so funny, dude. I love that shit. That was so good. Tabletless tablet. What the Okay, this is the tablet. That would be a great way to explain it. I just need to find that thing. Anyways, all this to say, SFA is something that I should probably explore. I'm not sure if it's something that I should explore now. I think that would require a much a higher commitment. At the moment, I feel like I should stick with my current settings, but it is something that is very exciting. I like the foundation of it. I like the idea of it. And you explored SFA for a whole month. That was SFA without using my wrist, if that makes any sense. With this arm sleeve, I can actually use my arm as the pivot instead of my wrist as the pivot. And that changes everything, man. That changes everything. But anyways, until then, I think I'm not going to use this thing. Newfound respect for SFA, dude. I think SFA is the future. No joke. Is this pre-recorded? Yes. And you are my paid chatter that I specifically created as a bot that would send that message at that point in time so that I would read it on this pre-recorded live stream.